A very good afternoon to all of you, and welcome to this session on global trade in turmoil, decoding the tariff war. So, I'm Dr. Bharti Singh, the area chair, economics and general management. I welcome you all for this session, which is quite current topic, and definitely we know that for the past few months there has been turmoil in the global economy because of tariff change that has taken place, and there is this tariff war which appears to be escalating. The corporates, the policymakers, and the government, they are all equally concerned about this global disturbance, or we can say this global chaos that has taken place. So today, this session has been arranged to decode this tariff war in a way, and we have two experts today with us. So these eminent experts, Professor Bibek Ray Chaudhuri and Mr. Sandeep Puri. I welcome both of them, and they would be helping us in decoding the three C's of this tariff war. So, these three C's of tariff war are the complexities, the causes, and the consequences of the ongoing tariff war. We would elaborate upon the various perspectives that emerge because of this tariff war. So I welcome Professor Bibek Ray Chaudhuri, who is a doctorate in economics from Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. Currently, he is a professor at the Indian Institute of Foreign Trade, Kolkata. He was a consultant with the National Council of Applied Economic Research, the NCAER, a leading think tank in New Delhi. He was a visiting fellow at the School of Environment, Education and Development, the University of Manchester, UK. He is a recipient of the prestigious Japanese Award for Outstanding Research and Development, conferred by the Ministry of Finance, Government of Japan, and the Global Development Network. Mr. Sandeep Puri is currently an executive director with the ALP Group in the international business area. He's a seasoned global business and growth strategist with about 30 years of extensive experience in spearheading global business growth across various industries, including automotive, engineering, and manufacturing. His expertise encompasses developing and executing international market entry strategies, establishing robust channel networks, driving OEM, and building strong value chain engagement models. So let us first understand what is a tariff. So let's demystify international trade for our participants, for our audience. So I will request Professor Bibek to give an overview in brief about what is a tariff and what is a non-tariff barrier. So over to you, Professor Bibek.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Singh. I am, overwhelmed by this, invitation from IMT CDL, and also am deeply honored to share this panel with a person like Mr. Puri. And so, basically, what I'm going to, discuss first is that, what are these, trade barriers, number one, and why are they actually used? So if you look at, even though we are overwhelmed by the tariff war that has started, and as expected, if, Mr. Trump comes to power, because of the fact that there was a feeling in US for a long time that, other countries are taking advantage of US in the sense that, there is a huge trade deficit. And I'll show you some data on that with many countries, including, as we will see, China, Mexico, Canada. Many of the, majorly apart from China, The other countries are, many of them are basically trade partners of US, which were basically a part of some agreements which have been signed earlier. And as we know, President Trump is not a fan of, free trade agreements. Now, so why these tariffs are there and why these non-tariff measures are there? It is basically, these are all strategic tools. You have to understand, like we have strategic tools at the corporate, at the company level, the top, CEOs and their team, they take, certain strategies to, maybe increase market share or increase, profits. Similarly, for a country, the country is managed by the government and the various departments, they would have certain strategy tools. And these strategic tools, in case of India, is the Commerce Ministry. In case of US, as you know, it is the USTR, the United States Trade Representative. So they are looking at it. And so what are they doing with this? They are basically trying to maximize the gain from trade. Okay, so that is the most important part to understand. Now, when we say gain from trade, what do we mean by that? So what we mean by that is that there are three important agents in the economy: government, households, and the firms. Now, when we look at the gain, then we look at all these three agents of the economy. Now, when trade leads to gain for all of them, it is fine. That means it's a win-win for all the three agents. But in most cases, what we find, it goes in favor of one or two of the agents and it goes against the other agent. That's the main problem area. Now, what happens during a free trade agreement or when the country is signing a free trade agreement? What happens is that the majority of the products, they reduce the tariff for the agreement partners. Now, once these tariffs are reduced, what happens is that it definitely leads to, number one, gain for the consumers. That means the households. Why? Because now they are going to get the same products which they are buying from other countries at a lower domestic price because of the fact that the tariff has come down. So they gain unambiguously. Problem is with the other two agents, which is the firms, because now they will be facing more competition from goods that are coming from other countries. So naturally, their market share comes down. Similarly, what is happening to the government is that if because of the tariff coming down, the tariff revenue comes down. Now, for any government like US, which has a huge deficit, that's a big problem because I already have a big deficit. Why? Because I have to buy most of my products and services from other countries, for which I have to pay more than I am selling to other countries. And actually, the problem actually starts from there. Why President Trump has been so aggressive is to correct this imbalance. Because of the fact that they have a huge trade deficit, it actually spills over and it actually leads to a domestic budget deficit. And that is a huge problem. Why? Because then in the future, your interest payments go up. Because if you're taking loans or if you're borrowing, going for market borrowings, then your interest payments that you have to make in the future, and now that goes up. So you have a continuous expenditure and you don't see that how it will be corrected. So one of the ways you want to correct is through reduction in the trade deficit. That's, I think, the major point. And so in that, what US has done is that they have increased the tariffs. Now, I'll show you some data later where if you see that, I'll show that there's a mismatch. See, why there's a mismatch is that if you look at the top 10 countries who have the highest trade surplus with US, it is not that, the Trump administration has imposed the highest tariffs for them. That's, little bit, to me, it is not, which means that everything that is being done is not economic. There are some other aspects to it, because if you look at the, trade deficit, then it should have been that with the countries with whom US has the highest trade deficit, there the tariff should have been the highest. Actually, that is not the case. And in fact, on China, it is much lower. I mean, to start with, later on, it was increased. But if you look at the first Annex 1 of the first declaration that came out from USTR, then China was around in the 33rd position if you look at the tariff which was imposed. Whereas for many of the countries with whom actually there is not much trade deficit, there actually it is much higher, and I'll show you those countries. So which tells me that there is something more. It's not only economic. Okay. So, and that on that I will again, I'll tell you certain things, my views, once the other speakers also speak on that. So that is so now if you look at tariffs, there are various kinds of tariffs. So there can be specific tariffs which are actually imposed on volume. There can be ad valorem tariffs which are imposed on value of the exports or imports, and there can be a combination tariff rate quota. Okay, there can be a combination where till certain volume the rate is low, after that volume the rate is high. So all these kind of various kinds of rates are there which restricts trade, and why the countries do that, let me tell you, majorly they do that to actually protect their domestic industries and ultimately to protect employment, because they are the government, they have to look at also maintaining the employment here. Other than that, of course, after WTO was signed by all its member countries in 1995, and then when it became a more, I would say, fairer ground when we consider trade, what has happened is that the scope for using tariffs have slowly come down. Why? Because naturally, given the earlier GATS rounds that happened before WTO came into being, and later on, because after WTO was formed, a lot of regional trading agreements were also signed. Why? Because WTO, the problem was that the decision had to be taken on consensus basis, which takes a lot of time for resolving certain trade disputes which might be there between the countries. So naturally and paradoxically, actually the number of trade agreements, regional trading agreements which were signed, which actually shot up after WTO was signed. Okay. So naturally what happened was that tariffs in general have come down. Now, if you look at on an average, the tariffs of developed countries, they are low, much lower than the tariffs of the developing countries. And that has to be the case. It is because your tariff must have some link to the level of development. Now, if you are a less developed or an emerging market or a less developed country, you just cannot open up your economy, because then it will be flooded by goods that are coming from advanced countries. And then what happens to our food security? If it is agricultural goods, it directly hits our food security. If it is industrial goods, it directly hits our firms who are actually producing those goods. So we cannot afford to actually reduce the tariffs as the developed countries can. Not only that, there is already an imbalance, because the developed countries, they are giving so much of subsidies to their agriculture sector. Their agriculture sector would have never been able to compete with the developing countries apart from the subsidies that are given to their agricultural sector. And their agricultural sector is actually more capital intensive than their industrial sector. So for few people, they are giving huge amount of subsidies. And that is where the developing countries are finding it difficult to compete, even in agricultural products where they have an advantage. So naturally, we cannot open up like that. So even if President Trump feels that there should be a reciprocal tariff, that doesn't make sense, because it has to reflect the level of development of that country. Now, I know he's taking this desperate measure because he wants to protect employment and industrial output in his own country. So I am not saying that, from his point of view, that is, something which he shouldn't have done. So from his point of view, he is trying to protect his country. But then we have to see whether actually that will happen, because the structure of the economy of US is such that can it again, revive its old manufacturing glory? I don't think that is again possible. So they have to move to more, value-adding things, AI, robotics. That's what they are going to move. And if they move to that, it is not going to increase their employment by the amount they think it will. Okay. So these non-tariff measures became the main strategic tool. Why? Because tariffs were, in focus. So average tariffs came down for both the developing and developed countries. So non-tariff measures became the main, I would say, source of strategy. Now, what happened was that since non-tariff measures are majorly covert, they are not overt, they are majorly covert, and they are majorly very subtle. So the developing countries found it very difficult to use them. Whereas the developed countries who had that capacity, they could use it very easily. And so if you look at that, they will always be ready to reduce the tariff if you negotiate with them. But even then, you will see that our exports are not going up by that much. It is because of those non-tariff measures. So they will have inspections, they will have certification issues. They will say that these are the labeling requirements. These are for food products. These are the SPS measures. So all these measures are there. Of course, they are required. I'm not saying they are not required, but in many cases, what happens is they are used as a tool to restrict your exports. So non-tariff measures, that's the reason why it has become so, I would say important. So given these reciprocal tariffs, all focus has again shifted back to tariffs. But even now, I am telling you that even after, reciprocal tariffs, non-tariff measures still remains the major barrier. Okay. So if you see, I can also share some data I have that what are the number of measures that is non-tariff measures that is imposed by US on Indian products. I'll show you that data later. As of now, I think now I have made my initial remarks, so I will now, leave it for the Professor
Okay, so
Singh.
very nicely explained, Professor Vivek, that there are two kind of barriers that can be used to promote or to protect international trade by a specific country. So there can be tariff measures, there can be non-tariff measures as well. So let's see how these various tools they have an impact on the corporate. So we, as a practitioner, we have Mr. Puri. So let's understand from Mr. Puri what is the impact of the current tariff war on the global scenario. So the global business, how is it affected, or what are the basic reasons of the current disruptions and its implications in general on the corporate world. So over to you, Mr. Puri.
Thank you, Dr. Bharti, for inviting me on this panel, and thank you, Dr. Vivek, for setting up beautifully the context. And I was also trying to echo with you on every word you said, and especially when you were talking of the non-tariff barriers. A lot of things were, rolling up in my mind. The kind of headwinds I would say we face from the developed countries. More recently, there is something called a product liability insurance, which, all exporters from India have to, take that insurance from the companies to, protect the life over there. So these are all non-tariff barriers which, normally come into play. And I think developed countries have a very right and might to exercise them also. But as you rightly said, they are the one who should be, having the kind of a lowest tariffs. But Mr. Trump's kind of narrative now is going into a opposite direction, which is away from the norm. But I think let us understand from my perspective that what is the cause of a war. I think the cause of a war is based on a warring concept where one country feels that other is charging me more, or other is charging me more for my goods or services. So this is just what you can say, uh, more of a perception, I would say, data, because as you rightly said, the data numbers on China are on 33rd position. So, but the tariff impact would be the highest one. So it is not necessarily based on pure data numbers. It is more of a perception that you are charging me more, so I will also charge you more. But uh, theoretically, I think what Mr. Trump is trying to achieve is, make manufacturing in America and, encourage American goods and services to be, made in America and be used by America. Looks very good in theory, but in practice, manufacturing of that level means you would not expect the garments which are made in Bangladesh and India to be made in US. The cost will not be, will be prohibitive in that sense. And also, I think the in hindsight, the agenda, what I feel is behind this tariff war is also to provide, restrict the illegal migration and, drug peddling also. Because what he feels that the ease of good between two countries by way of tariff also gives rise to these kind of illegal migration and exports also. So I think that is also, one point on his agenda, that he can restrict these two things by, imposing tariffs. If you take a recent examples of, lot of migration happening to Canada from India, and he imposing a tariff against Canada, because a lot of Indian students or, Asian students who are not able to get into US find Canada as a way to go to US. So I think these kind of things are very well known in political circles also. See, as I said, other demands alongside migration are the tariffs and this migration. See, as per IMF's data, after this tariff war started, it expects the American economy to grow at 2.8% against 3.3% in 2025. But this is, counter effect of what Mr. Trump thinks. He thinks that by imposing the tariff, the American economy will grow. But, IMF, takes it otherwise. See, today, US imports $9 billion of goods per day, as per the data, which translates to approximately $200 million in duties for the government. And Mr. Trump is targeting this $200 million, which is close to 1,600, 1,800 crores, to grow to $1 billion a day. And just by increasing tariff, he thinks that the problem will be solved, but I think the problem will be more compounded. Let me give you an example from automotive industry. See, automotive industry in India contributes to about 7.1% of GDP and almost 48% of manufacturing GDP, which is a huge number. In US, the auto GDP is close to about 5%. The suppliers are anticipating that this tariff will increase the average price of per car from $5,000 to $15,000 per car. That is the increase which will be passed to the consumer. Now, as a supplier, I am not going to bear this, nor the supplier nor the manufacturer in the US is going to bear this. So ultimately, consumer is going to hit from this rise. But another interesting thing, Mr. Trump has also dialed all the CEOs of American automotive companies and threatening them not to increase the prices. So ultimately, it becomes a chicken and egg situation. Who will bear the brunt? But I think as the time passes, things will settle down. But as Indian component supplier, we don't find that we are at risk, and nor does China. I'll tell you example of China. China, only 2% of their GDP is exposed to US trade. 98% of China's GDP is not dependent on US. So they are also, not going to get affected much because they're already struggling with their all real estate and a lot of issues. So I don't think so. There will be much of impact also on the China also. So we believe that at the current global scenario is more into a state of transition. Nothing can be, preempted or calculated right now. And I think the causes are very well known. But if it happens or if it continues, you mark my words, it will be good for India.
Okay, so very nicely you have explained the impact of this tariff war, say on the Indian economy or in context of the US economy. So let's look in terms of the impact of this disruption on the global economy as such. I would request Professor Bibek to just give an overview regarding, in general, what are the various different areas on which the global economy would be affected. So, will there be a positive impact in terms of the growth of the global economy, or there would be certain kind of challenges, and more so in terms of the developed and the developing countries of the world?
I will just share my screen.
Okay.
If I am allowed, I don't know.
Yeah, it is possible.
Is this PPT visible to everyone?
Yes, it is visible.
Okay, thank you. So I will just, I have already given you the, overview of this, tariffs. Just I am showing you that over there, so I have taken till 2020 because beyond that, because of the COVID, many things have been disrupted. In some other context, I will show you even for 2023. But in general, if you see that these are the, I've just looked at a simple average tariff. So even for US, if you look at it was 4.66 in 2010. These are tariffs on Indian agricultural products. And if you see that for US, it is, apart from all the other major countries where we are exporting our products, for US, actually the average tariff has gone up in year 2020 on Indian agricultural products. So you can see that because of the first presidency of Mr. Trump, it is already, you can see that some increase had already happened. Now, if you look at industrial products, then if you look at the industrial products, if you see again the tariffs on Indian goods, then you will see that it was 2.37% on an average 2010, but in 2020 it has gone up to 3.59%. So it is majorly for US that has happened. So US has changed the stance, not today, but even during the first time Mr. Trump became the president. Now, if you look at the non-tariff measures, as I've said, so these are the list of non-tariff measures. So we may not get into that, but I'm just showing you, as I've said, that what kind of NTMs are actually imposed by US on Indian products. And can you imagine? So these are the number of measures that are imposed. Now, it might be, many people might say that, of course, these are not very different across the countries, because non-tariff measures, normally they are, whichever country is imposing, normally they are almost same for all the countries. But you can well imagine that these are the number of barriers, measures that are there. So they are not only using tariffs, but they are also using a number of NTMs to restrict our exports to their countries. So that is very clear from this is a study which had been done by Exim Bank, and of course the data has been taken from WTO. So if you ask me what would be the disruptions, before that I'm just going to, as I've said, I'll show you the the US deficit, trade deficit over the years. I have just taken 2000, 2010, 20 and 23. And you can see that right from 2010, China is the #1 country with whom US has the highest. These are all in million US dollars, highest trade deficit. So US has the highest trade deficit with China. And then, you can see Mexico is there. So you can see all the usual suspects are there who have a huge trade deficit with, US. Now, so what we expect that the tariff that was announced would be highest for these countries. Actually, that is not the case. If I look at the reciprocal tariff, the order from which I have taken it, the first order, as you can see, the highest is on Lesotho. So these are the countries on which the highest tariff has been actually imposed. And if you look at China, China is here. I mean, the first one. Next, of course, it was increased much more. But the first order that came out, as you can see, China is here. So that makes me think that actually, there is more to this, reciprocal tariff than meets the eye, because there might be many other reasons. I think some of them, Mr. Puri has already mentioned. So there are many other reasons why, this has been done. So one might be that, initially the tariff revenue might go up because there is a, huge deficit situation and they want to decrease their, international debt also. So that might be the reason. So what we are going to see here is that another point that I would like to mention here is that this is of course, and I don't want to go to the technicalities of this graph. This is a graph which shows that if a tariff is imposed, there is a welfare loss for the country which is doing it. But that is for a small open economy. That a small open economy means the economy who has a trade, as a share of the total world trade lower than 5%. So it would be a country like India. But the strange thing is, and nobody is speaking about that, is that if it is a large open economy like US, then the story is different. For a large open economy, it is possible that the optimum tariff is positive. That means if tariff is imposed and tariff is increased, it actually may improve the welfare of the large open economy. So we shouldn't think that it's madness. There is a method in the madness. Why it is being done, there is a reason, and theoretically there is a chance that if a large open economy imposes tariff, actually they may gain, because the loss that may happen because of the increase in tariff, it can be actually made up fully by there is something called the terms of trade effect. It might affect their terms of trade positively, which positive gain may actually negate the negative gain. So it is not that it is like a small open economy where given everything, the optimum tariff is normally zero. So this point, I think nobody is actually pointing out. But this is a theoretical possibility, and this is there in the textbook. It's a textbook model. It is not a very sophisticated model, just a textbook model. So for a large open economy, there is a chance that if they impose a tariff, that their welfare actually increases. So this is also the reason why he might be doing it. So this also might be the impact, that it actually increases the revenue, or also it increases the welfare in US. Now, but actually, if you think that what can be the impact, if you ask me, as has already been pointed out by Mr. Puri, I always believe, because many people ask me this question, including my students who are already in corporates, they have also asked me. So what I feel is that, first of all, this whole reciprocal tariff, apart from the economic benefits it might lead to for US, also it is kind of a signal to because they are a democracy, signal to the voters of Mr. Trump that this is why you have actually elected me, and and I'm showing that whatever you wanted, I'm doing that. So I think that is definitely one of the things that he is trying to make a political gain. But if you look at very recently all polls, his actually popularity as per the polls is among the lowest among the presidents in the first 100 days. So it is not actually helping. Now, secondly, like as Mr. Puri has pointed out, nothing is going to happen to India. In fact, India may gain, and nothing will also happen to China. That is happening already, because if you are imposing a tariff on China, China is sending the goods through other countries where the tariff is lower. Already it is happening. Already it is going from India. So, business is like a river. It will flow to the direction it wants. Any barrier comes, it changes the courses. It's like a river. So you can never prevent it. If there is demand, I'm an economist, I will always say if there is demand and supply, they will meet. Nobody will be able to stop that. So I don't think Mr. Trump doesn't understand that. He understands this fully well. He is himself a businessman. So I think that this will not go on for long, and this will definitely come to a logical conclusion. And I think in next 6 to 7 months, we can expect that to happen. This 100%, that may continue for some more time, but that is not going to affect neither China nor India. If it at all, in the short term, it may affect US negatively. And for the world as a whole, I think since US is one of the so it's the largest economy, so naturally if its growth is hurt, as pointed out by Mr. Puri, then naturally the world growth may be hurt a little bit. But if you look at India, there are already estimates that 0.5% our GDP may be impacted. That too I think in a very short term. 0.5, that is the estimates that has come out. So our our forecast was 6.5%. It is maybe 6%. So that's it. I mean, not much impact that we are expecting, and everybody expected this to happen. So they have already started diversifying their markets. Both China, India, all countries have already started diversifying their markets. So in next 1 to 2 years, what we are going to see is that our direction of trade will little bit change, and that will take care of the problems. Not only that, for India, I always tell my students that actually our population is a strength. It's not a weakness, it's a strength, because it means that we have a large market. And so our population itself can sustain a healthy growth rate, even if on external front we are not doing very well. I think in this aspect we are very different from China, even though China has a large population. But I think the purchasing power of our population today, at least today, is more, because in China inequality is much higher than us. Okay, so our population will help us to sustain a healthy rate of growth. So in that sense also we are more or less insulated from this thing. So my take would be that in the short run there might be certain difficulties, but in the long run things are going to adjust towards the new equilibrium.
Okay, so as per your viewpoint, Professor Vivek, it is a situation which is much more fluid as of now. So how the economy would be affected, the future will show us. So as per your estimates, only 0.5% of a decrease in the global economic growth rate would be there. So we have taken a macro perspective, the impact of this tariff war on a country as a whole or on the global economy. But all of us are consumers. As a macro perspective, we are all equally concerned as to what impact would be there on us as a consumer. So let's come to a micro perspective, and I would now request Mr. Puri to elaborate on the impact of this tariff war on an individual citizen or a consumer like us. So over to you, Mr. Puri. And so also for the audience, for the participants, if you have any questions, you can keep posting your questions over the chat mode, and we'll be taking your questions as well, or any question that you want to put across to any of the experts in the session. So let's now take the views of Mr. Puri on the impact of this tariff war on the consumers.
Okay, ma'am, I think having spent almost 3 decades in international marketing, I see the current scenario nothing less than disruption. It happened in COVID. So I can compare this with COVID and as example. See, when the COVID happened, Indian markets or Indian people are so resilient. See what happened at that point of time. During COVID, a lot of automotive companies, my examples are from automotive, they redefined their supply chains. Earlier, they were dependent on China. So a lot of supply chains were redefined to India. In automotive, redefining supply chains is not an overnight job. It is a long process of 2 to 3 years, because any OEM, let us say a car company or a truck company, if it has to change any component or a source from supplier A to supplier B, then with that component, they have to do full validation of the vehicle for so many lakh kilometers to put it fit on the road. So I think automotive companies and similar other companies would have used that opportunity in COVID to redefine their supply chains. And if you look at the auto component GDP from India, pre-COVID, it was $45 billion. Today, it is $75 billion. So COVID actually helped us to, our economy to grow. And this particular situation, I can see and relate exactly like a COVID, when in COVID, we became China plus one. But I think this will make us China plus 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 one. And I think this kind of disruption should be taken an opportunity in adversity, and this will give rise to a lot of Indian multinationals coming up. Let me give you an example of my own company. See, we have mitigated our risk by buying the distribution companies in US, Spain, Germany, Australia. Now we are looking at the pockets where the tariff is the lowest to US. It could be Oman, it could be UAE. So, a lot of thought process is going on between, a lot of think tanks are working to, give a clear risk mitigation strategy for us to, work and, weather the storm. I think it is moving us away from complacency also, I would say, and, getting us back on our toes to find the unexplored markets. Like earlier, we had not exposed ourselves much in Russia. but now we are looking, Russia is also one of the markets. We have started also manufacturing in Africa also. So I think we are using all these measures and opportunities now to be resilient and mitigate this risk. One ripple effect which I foresee, and this is my own personal view, I would feel that if this tariff stays constant, means whatever is on China remains, whatever is on India remains, if it is frozen at this point of time, the Indian economy will grow much faster. Why? Let us say at current tariff levels from China or India, whatever it is, American consumers and American customers have to pay more upfront to the government to release the goods. Okay, so which means there will be a stretch on the liquidity because a lot of cash will be stuck in the system before you can actually sell the goods. So there will be cash flow issues. So to ease the cash flow, Mr. Jerome Powell would again, maybe lower the interest rates just to, improve the liquidity and make the money easily available. So when the money is easily available and the interest rates are lower, then all the FIs will pull their money and shift to India because American markets yield will be unattractive. So when the money comes to India, so this will be invested in Indian companies. So again, India will flare up. So I think this way or that way, we are safer. And I don't say I'm a very, optimistic person. I feel that this is really going to help India. And thanks to our, without any biases to the government, our diplomacy is also working very well in terms of, not spitting the venom or not, getting into these wars and taking a kind of a muted and, very cool stand. And I think these times are good for India. That's all I can say. Thank you.
Okay. So if you take a specific country, you believe India would be on a edge in terms of the various other countries of the world. So if you look at the world as a global market, as a global platform, Professor Bibek, do you think this globalization that took place at a rapid pace after 1980s, so it would continue, or such kind of wars, they would have an adverse impact on the globalized world?
So see, actually, if you look at globalization, then it also has seen cycles. So there would be times when globalization will progress fast. There would be times when globalization will slow down. So if you look at the world, I'm not going much far in the past, but if you just look at during the first part of the 20th century, and then we had that Great Depression. So after that, what happened was, because of the fact that the politics at that time majorly, the democracies were not actually delivering. So what happened because of that, fascists and the other kinds of authoritarian regimes, they came up, and that is the reason why there is a theory behind that. They say that because of this, actually, because the democracy was unable to deliver, that's the reason why those kind of governments had come up in Germany, in Italy, everywhere, that and other countries. So because of that, there was a tariff wall that was created, and world trade came down, world GDP came down. That's the reason why there was a conference in Bretton Woods, and that's the reason why then they thought about World Bank, IMF, GATS, and then subsequently we got WTO. So, and then if you look at the world after that, slowly the the dominant currency shifted from pound to dollar. We shifted from a very fixed kind of an exchange rate to more flexible kind of exchange rates. And then again, we had the Washington Consensus in the first half of 1980s. Then we had the Seoul Consensus. So if you look at the way the things have moved, so there is a cycle. So it came down during that time, the Second World War, and then again it went up. Now again it is, coming. It also came down during the first, oil crisis, 72, 73, 74, that time. And again, now it is coming down. And why it is coming down this time, as I must point out that it is different. Why it is different is because till this time, it was the Western countries who had dictated the terms, because they were much more powerful than the other countries. And fortunately, according to me, that is not the case now. Since we have China, and then we have Russia, then now India, and then we have our other BRIC countries. And if you remember what President Trump had actually threatened India, that you don't support the BRICS currency and all those things. Why? Because there is a perception in the Western world that these countries are now becoming very powerful. In no time, the dollar dominance already, which is being questioned, in no time the dollar dominance will go, and then dollar dominance going means it is their dominance going. So this time it is different. This time it is much different than earlier. So that's why I feel that these bouts of tariff wars or other kinds of economic wars will continue in some form or the other. But that will be on I think, much more equal ground than it used to happen. Okay, that is my first point. Second point is that if you look at the way the reciprocal tariffs have been imposed and the way they have been changed very frequently, then it is very clear that US knows that the tariffs that they're imposing on China will affect them minimum. Nothing will much happen to China. So what they are trying to do, they are saying, okay, keep the tariffs fixed for China and then remove it for all others for 100 days or something. So what signal is US giving? They are saying that don't do business with China. They know themselves, they will, if you keep it to US, they will never be able to challenge the dominance of China. So they want all other countries to come together against China. I think that is a huge thing that that is happening. So, but I don't think any of the countries have actually yielded to this kind of a request, because they are hugely dependent on China. Let me tell you, I did a project for the Ministry of Commerce very recently, and they asked me to actually calculate our dependence on China for certain product groups. You will be astonished to know that in many of very critical products like pharmaceuticals and others, we are almost 95% dependent on China. If today they stop, then we are gone. So we have a much more synergistic relationship with China. So naturally, we should nurture that. And if we nurture that, and given our population, again and again, I'm saying the population strength, then we did not worry about what US would be doing. Because if we yield too much to US, that is actually going to harm our economy in the long run. Short term, you may get some gains. Because what we need today is innovation. We need to have innovations. Now, I think the government has also started, investing in our own AI, engines and all those things that has started. Government has understood that. So these are the things where we should be now concentrating, so that in the future we become less and less dependent on these Western powers, whom I feel has always taken us into. So they have always created rift in the, South, in the global South, to gain to gain, make their gains on their own. So that is where, I think now is the right time where the South can come together and actually become a formidable, I would say, power to challenge the hegemony of the North.
It's a very different perspective, a very fresh perspective that you have put forward, Professor Bibek. So the global world order may change, and there would be emergence of certain groups that would be giving competition to the developed world as such. And in this scenario, I would take the view of a practitioner. So which are the companies or sectors or the areas or industries where there can be greater benefit in this tariff war that the world is facing? So for India, which sectors do you believe, Mr. Puri, they would be gaining from this particular tariff war?
I think from this tariff war, the manufacturing sector is going to be the biggest beneficiary, be it in automotive, be it into other industrial capital goods, these areas of manufacturing. One sector which I feel could take a hit. I don't belong to that sector, but I read IT sector is one sector which I think can take a hit because the all the IT companies are in India are dependent on the spends of the corporates in US. So that may be temporarily impacted, but since the apart from traditional IT companies, the companies coming into cloud or AI would be the beneficiary. I don't think so. India would lose much on any front. I don't think so. But manufacturing sector is one thing which is surely 100% is going to gain. If you look at examples of Apple, our phone manufacturing is being shifted to India. You see, Tesla now coming to India. There are some overhang with BYD because of the headwinds we face with China. But apart from that, I think manufacturing sector will rule, and I think those who are investing in manufacturing sector, I think they will be the biggest beneficiaries. And also we are going to be challenged now. And when in these challenging times you try to become cost competitive, a lot of best practices will follow to India from other countries. A lot of Indian multinationals will companies will become. So I think manufacturing sector, again, in conclusion, is going to be the biggest beneficiary.
Okay. So that was a brief set of questions that we have taken up for discussion. So since the time is limited, I would now request the participants to put forward their questions. If you want a clarification, the viewpoints of our experts on certain areas, you may put forth your questions over the chat mode. And in the meantime, just another perspective that I would like my experts to delve upon is, so do you think there would be certain implications in terms of the hiring which is taking place in the organizations? So since it is related to industry, I would request Mr. Puri to put forward his views on this. So do you think hiring would be affected adversely, or there would be no such adverse impact?
I don't think so any adverse impact on hiring. Rather, I would say the hiring will improve
Okay.
because a lot of new skill sets would be required. A lot of new things will be coming up. I think if I go by US example, one person directly employed into manufacturing in US in automotive, gives a kind of a cascading effect of 11 more employments down the line, right? So if we see the same disruption happening into manufacturing now because of these tariffs, I think the because of the gains we are going to reap, I think we don't see any impact on the hiring, but only the skill sets will change, but not the headcount wise. India will not go into recession, 100%.
So that's good for the country. So we can conclude that we are looking for certain opportunities in all these adversities which are there at the global level. And with this, we can call a end of the session. If still there are any questions, you can put forward your questions. I hope we have covered almost all perspectives regarding this trade war. So this was a very insightful session where we were able to explore the complexities, the implications of the tariff war, and our experts have very adeptly highlighted the reasons and the impact of this tariff war. They have delved over upon the trade imbalances, the effect on the various industries, the impact on the supply chain, and probably as to what impact can be there on a consumer. So there are valuable insights which have been put forward and certain kind of potential strategies that can be looked into by the various businesses in this challenging environment. So how the businesses or specific sectors can look for opportunities in this chaos at the global level. So thank you. I would extend my sincere gratitude to our experts, our esteemed speakers, Professor Bibek Ray Chaudhuri and Mr. Sandeep Puri. So this was a very articulate analysis of the current scenario, and I am sure our participants would have understood regarding this very critical subject, that is a hot topic in a way in the current global scenario. So thank you for sharing your valuable time and your expertise. And we can again look for certain such more insightful sessions in the future. So thank you, Professor Bibek, once again.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.